well. So my name is Stephanie Fritz. I'm the mission coordinator for the Office of Christian Formation. And I'm joined here by my colleagues today, Janet, she'll give us a wave, and Miata. And we are the mighty team of the Office of Christian Formation. We welcome all of you. And I think here today with us, we've got folks that have been in cohorts, folks that have coached cohorts, those of you that are interested in learning about cohorts. And it's been one of the most exciting things that we've been able to do over the last 3 years. And we really thought it was time to take a moment and pause and reflect and hear from all of y'all and talk about what else we can do with our cohorts. So appreciate you all being here, and I'm going to open us up with prayer. Please pray with me. Gracious and loving God, thank you for bringing us all here together today from across states and countries. Be with us now as we share, as we learn, and as we dream together about how leaders can be better equipped to do the work of the gospel in the world. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started today. So first thing that we're going to do is I'm just going to run through a presentation about cohorts, where we've been, where we're going, and the things that we've learned. And then we're going to start to hear from some of you all. So let me get my screen on here. I'm going to look for a heads up from Janet that everybody can see it. And we're going to get going here. All right, all about cohorts, where we've been, where we're going. We're going to talk about the journey of the cohorts that we've had through the Office of Christian Formation. We're going to talk about what that means to us. The word cohort, the word coach, these are terms that have been used in a variety of different ways. And we've developed some methods of how we talk about cohorts, how we talk about coaching in the Office of Christian Formation along with our partners. So we're going to talk about that today. And then at the end of the presentation, we're going to hear from coaches, we're going to hear from participants, and then we're going to talk about how we can improve our cohorts and what you all need as leaders going forward. So right before 2020, I attended coach training, International Coaching Federation, ICF coach training through Vibrant Faith, and began to dream about what does it mean to have coaching in a group setting. And then suddenly it was the pandemic. And so then we really sort of fast forward all of our hopes and wishes and dreams about that. And what we saw right away, of course, was in the pandemic, we were stretching ourselves more than we thought was ever possible. We were in need as leaders, we were in need of innovation. We were experimenting on a daily, weekly, second basis. And we understood that now more than ever, our ministry was very contextual to where we were at. So these were the needs that we were seeing out there, and wondered together if we were going to meet those needs. Since we couldn't meet those needs in person, we talked about how could we meet those needs with coached cohorts. And so we started with our partnerships. And in the Office of Christian Formation, we do believe in doing ministry in partnership with one another. And we do that primarily with our 5 partners. And so you see an alphabet soup there on your screen, but Presbyterian Youth Workers Association, the Association of Partners in Christian Education, UKirk Collegiate Ministries, Presbyterian Older Adult Ministries Network, and our Presbyterian Church Camp and Conference Association. Those are the folks that we went to and said, you know what leaders need. Let's talk about how we can put together leader cohorts and meet those needs. So here's some stats. This is where we've been. In partnership with 4 of those organizations, we started offering cohorts in 2020, continued in 21 and 22, and so far we've started 9 in 2023. So 12 to 15 cohorts each year. We had 4 to 8 leaders in each cohort typically. Our sweet spot tends to be 6 to 8 leaders in a cohort. This has amounted to equipping and connecting over 200 leaders. And we've trained 20 coaches in International Coaching Federation standards over this time. So what kinds of cohorts have we offered? Well, I started by listing all of them, right? That was quite a few different topics, but I'll talk about this in terms of topics and themes that we've covered. So we started with the pandemic. What did digital ministry look like? How are we partnering with parents? What about different ways of connecting? That, of course, led to the need for innovation. So we had cohorts around out-of-the-box thinking. We had cohorts that we actually call Enhance and Innovate. We've had quite a few age and stage, and this is where our partners come in, age and stage cohorts, youth ministry, collegiate ministry, older adult ministry, intergenerational ministry. We've done cohorts around all of these. We really felt like it was important to include new to ministry cohorts in our lineup. So whether you were a brand new youth worker, a brand new Christian educator, or collegiate minister, we had a new to youth ministry, new to faith formation ministry cohorts. And we continue to offer those almost in every session that we've done. Affinity-based cohorts, we've had people of color cohorts, we've had people that are serving in presbytery ministry cohorts, and really we're looking to expand this affinity-based, those that work in small church. So if you've had something in common, all the leaders have something in common as opposed to around a topic. Justice and the Matthew 25 initiative. We've had LGBTQIA+ cohorts in our youth ministry cohorts. We've done hard conversation cohorts. We've done cohorts around how do you do justice and advocacy work in your setting. And finally, wellness and leadership. Our Sabbath cohorts talked about how you were going to take Sabbath. How are you going to be a better leader? Leading well became one of our very impactful cohorts. We helped collegiate campus ministers that are parents come together and talk about how it works to be in college ministry and be a parent at the same time. So that's just a few of our cohorts around those particular themes. So how do we define a cohort? Well, in our office, we've defined cohorts in a few ways. They're led by a trained coach. I mentioned International Coaching Federation. We believe in the coaching model. We'll talk about that a little bit more and why we do that. In working with the international, the ICF guidelines, we determined that 6 to 8 participants was really our ideal number. We want a critical mass, and in a 90-minute session, we want the ability for everybody to contribute to what these cohorts look like. So there on your screen, you can see really just kind of a quote about what a cohort looks like. A cohort will provide a setting to encourage and learn from other colleagues that are also on this journey. Through a facilitated conversation and interaction, you will support one another and set your own goals. So what's different about a cohort from an experience where a support experience is that you are always future looking. So we gather around particular topics and we ask those involved in the cohort to think about what is their preferred future. What steps will they need to take to get there? And this is what our trained coach helps them accomplish in this group setting. So what about that coach? Talked a lot about what a coach means. Coaching is different. It differs from other helping relationships. So coaches are not therapists. They're not spiritual directors, though we've had spiritual direction cohorts. But it differs in that the assumption is that the expertise lies within the coachee and not the coach. The role of the coach is to create new awareness, facilitate growth by listening, and ask powerful questions, drawing out new insight. So we feel like the role of the coach is central to our cohort process, and the success of our cohorts has lied with the fact that we use a trained coach. So what happens in a cohort? So we send out a document that outlines what to expect when you're part of a cohort. And we ask our coaches to go over that document, and each of our coaches has a different way of making sure that the participants understand these things. When you gather with a cohort, recognize that God is present. God will show up in surprising ways that we aren't always aware of or planning for. We're recognizing that the group has more wisdom and experience than any individual leader, so that you are trusting the coaching model. Your coach is not a workshop leader, and your coach is most often not a consultant, although there are times in our cohorts where the coach might slip on that consultant hat, and they usually they're taught to identify when they're doing that to go through a particular scenario. But we remember that coaching is inherently experimental. So each of our participants commits to being alert, being willing to share. Attending the cohort is a priority. When one person is missing and two people are missing, it makes a difference in a cohort. So attendance is a large commitment and part of this. Each cohort participant seeks to support and encourage one another. And finally, and certainly not last, maybe even first, at the beginning of each cohort session, or at the start of the cohort, the full, 6 weeks, we remind everybody that what happens in a cohort remains in a cohort, that you respect confidentiality. So whether your cohort is about new to youth ministry, is about digital ministry, is about Sabbath, or enhancing and innovating, you're going to have these core principles in a cohort that we do. So these are important things that we try to remember. All right. Are you all seeing my slide advance, or is it frozen?
Frozen.
Frozen. Mm-hmm.
Frozen. All right. Well, let's try that again. Let's go back in here. Okay, All right, so when I asked the question of some of our cohort participants, and we're going to hear a little bit more from them, they definitely shared the impact that they experienced in these cohorts, and I liked some of these sharings. Coach cohorts are the magic intersection of reflection, accountability, learning, and relationships. Cohorts are a great way to meet other leaders who love to reflect, learn, and grow. And the encouragement and accountability to put our reflections into small, actionable steps. And I think that's really the key here, is that, again, a cohort is a process in which you move forward through the wisdom of the group led by the coach, and you're making small steps towards your goal. So you get out of a cohort, you know, what you put into a cohort. And I think that's one of the most important keys that we have. That is the impact. I think what my screen doesn't like is when I'm doing other stuff, it suddenly freezes up the PowerPoint. So those are some of the most important things that we've learned about cohorts. Few other things that I will share before we talk to our coaches and our participants is the major turning point for us as we move into the next steps is thinking about what we've learned in the process of cohorts and how we're going to move forward. So we know that we've learned a few things about making sure that the expectations are understood by participants. We know that it's important that everybody understands that attendance is a large part of our cohorts. We offer cohorts at free or for a small admin charge in partnership with our partners. And often it's hard to communicate the value of these cohorts because while they are free in terms of money, I'll steal this from my colleagues in the Office of General Assembly, it doesn't come without a cost, right? So we invest in training our cohort leaders in the Office of Christian Formation. Our associations invest in thinking about what topics, what format, when to offer cohorts. So we have a lot of time and resources invested into these cohorts. And so that's the cost of that. And what we ask from our participants is to understand the expectations and to make attendance a priority and bring their whole selves to the cohort process. So we've learned that there are different ways to communicate this. We've learned that sometimes a cohort meshes together and has the right amount of jive, and sometimes it might not. So we're working with that. How do we think about the best way to, do we have cohorts that are just for pastors? Do we have cohorts that are just for volunteers? We're talking about having cohorts for commissioned ruling elders. These are all things that we are exploring and things that we have learned about as we look at the fall. So this fall, we're going to take a different approach to our cohorts in that in the past, we've offered cohorts in partnership with each of the four of the five organizations I mentioned. They have run their own registration process, and we have promoted that. We have trained, equipped, and prepared the coach to lead those. What we're going to do this fall is offer some cohorts in one registration format with feedback and participation from all of our partners. But whether you are a youth worker, a CRE, a volunteer, an educator, you will come to one space to register for your fall cohorts. And so that's one of the reasons that we come to this meeting here, is because we want to hear some of your ideas and things that you're looking for with those cohorts. Those we'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes, just exactly logistically when those will occur. But I'm going to stop here and turn to some of my coaches that have agreed to share their experience about coaching a cohort. And I'm looking for you on my screen. So I know that Sandy Safford, we're all in the middle of a great big storm here in Colorado, and she lost her internet, so she won't be able to share with us. But I think Vaughn, are you with, oh, there's Sandy. I see her. I'll let you get your bearings, Sandy. Vaughn Clemens, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
What would you like to share with us?
Yes, I suggested to Stephanie that I would share that I've done 6 cohorts so far as a coach, and one of the things that's been consistent over most of them has been a desire to continue on meeting as a group after the cohort is over. The people find in the cohorts a network of colleagues that are dealing with the same issues, and they come to know, and they find that very important for supported ministries as they move forward. So some of the groups have met like every other week as the cohort schedule. Some have met monthly, some have met once a quarter, and at least one had a yearly gathering, just to see how see how everything was going. But I think that's a wonderful opportunity for the church to create pockets of people who continue to connect after this one-time opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. So I talked a lot about the makeup of our cohorts, but didn't quite mention the length of time, because it's varied greatly, though we've come down to having a lot of 6-week cohorts. But we love that these cohorts have chosen to move on and continue meeting. Thank you, Vaughn. Sandy, what would you like to share?
Thank you. Yeah, I just think the wide variety of voices, from cohorts that have representation across the United States. I've had folks from Canada and Puerto Rico, and just the rich conversation and dialogue, and then the sharing of resources. So every cohort that I've led has built a Google Doc of resources that has been added to by folks, and has just continued to grow. And so having that larger voice to create a resource list has been a great asset. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, we talk about our cohorts not being a workshop, right? And not led by the expert. However, that does not mean that you're not sharing resources collectively, and our coaches are very well trained to listen for what the group might be looking for and pointing towards resources. So thank you for sharing that. And I think, let's see, Sarah Erickson, you were going to share with us this morning or this afternoon.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, one of the things I have done 3 cohorts so far for POAM, Presbyterian Older Adult Ministries Network. And like Sandy, the voices from across the country and in Canada have been really beneficial to one another. But one of the features of our groups has often been that there have been sort of several topics that resonate among all the participants. So we've often covenanted to do some content-rich coaching in each session that addresses a common theme, where the conversation may be seeded with some resources to then resource breakout groups around the topics that are of interest. So the participants may then brainstorm, workshop how, or if they're going to incorporate that information into their goals and projects. And that seems to have worked really well and generated a lot of conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I know we've got some other coaches with us, and I want to take a moment just to thank all of our coaches and give them a great big shout out, wave your hands, clap, yay, because they have been amazing. We've just sort of, a few of these coaches have kind of graduated from a long classroom session and are getting excited about the next round. So I know a few of those coaches are here with us today as well. Wonderful. So I'm going to move on to hearing from some of our participants and what has been meaningful, what has been transformational for you about participating in a cohort. And as I look for you on my screen, you might put up your hand, raise hand feature so I can find you easily. But on my screen is Rich. So I'm going to start with Rich.
Hey, y'all. I agreed to share because it has been a profound thing for me. And I want to thank whoever makes these things possible. I was telling Michelle Thomas Bush, I said, who do I send an email to? Who do I write a note to? Who do I whatever? So first of all, I want to thank you for your work, time, resources, however that magic works. I'm in an innovation in youth ministry, working away from programs with Michelle Thomas Bush and 15 other people from around the nation. And I think the underlying message really that I've gotten every time I step off of the Zoom and do the little wave is that we are not alone and then we're all in this together. I think that for me is the most profound thing. You know, in your gathering with people who have similar motivation levels as well. And so I try to stay balanced in life and work, but I also try to improve. And these cohorts create an opportunity and a space, a consistent space for that movement to happen in my own ministry. And you know, there's a high percentage of, I take 3 or 4 pages of notes down too, which really translates and helps in personal ministry. And those are the few things that I'd like to share.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, absolutely. So happy to hear about your experience. Okay. I think I have a couple of other participants that we're going to share. You want to, let me just kind of go through the screen. Natasha, were you one that would like to share? Thank you so much.
Sure. Hey, y'all. So one of the things that's been impactful to me, first of all, is knowing who I can reach out to and when. I have reached out to several people as individuals on this call and as coaches. And also one of the cohorts I participated in, the Sabbath rest, the opportunity to be able to pick someone to journey along with me was very refreshing. I think that acknowledged many things. One of them being that I am an adult who can navigate my journey, right? So thank you for that. I think, am I supposed to talk about what I look forward to in the future right now or no?
We'll have another space for that in just a few minutes, but yeah, I want you to share that. But yeah, we're mostly just sharing what Natasha participated in one of our Sabbath cohorts for sure. Yeah,
I did. Yeah. And so also just I appreciate the opportunity to be able to report back. I feel like that's just as important as being able to receive. I think it's that denotes some a mutuality and as well as accountability. And I also just appreciated being able or knowing who else was doing this with me so I could check in on them. They could check in on me. That still happens. You know, we give each other permission to do so. And so just, again, being very relational, because I think it helps create and facilitate the connectional church, which is what we continue to strive to be. It's not a one and done. So
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, we really like to hear about the relationships that are formed long term, because that's a very, we are a connectional church, and this is the way that we believe that community is how we experience God. And so I think our cohorts have been one way in which to do that across geographical lines. Let's see, Mark Lampley, are you able to share with us?
Yeah, happy to share. To have a grateful heart for the way that our cohort has been consistently caring for one another. This cohort that I guess has been the longest one for me has been over 5 years, because we kind of were a pilot before sort of the popularity of the cohort. So it enriched us from the beginning. But our cohort has, with the monthly meeting for so many years, have seen, births of children and deaths of parents. And so it's a pastoral care, but it's also very Christian ed focus, share nostalgia of common places that are sacred to us. And so there's a great rapport there. Trust factor has, gone so high that I think I would probably choose some of my cohort people over some other long-term friends, because these are people that know what the uniqueness of ministry is about and how that affects a personal life. And so also really enjoyed the short-term Sabbath cohort. That was a rich experience, in part for what's already been mentioned, how you get to give back, share, and bring alongside a church member to enlarge their concept of church and support, and just the Christian ed world that is so very good at sharing with one another. We just seem to excel in practical ideas and the love for one another. So the uniqueness of everybody in the Sabbath cohort was great, because it made me expand my concept of a spiritual practice individually. And I was able to teach that to my church members, and particularly the one that was accompanying me, but also the other cohort that's been multiple years. We've taken advantage of the fact that, we want to grow professionally, but also personally. So we've, probably read about 4 or so books together, and taken it not in a drudgery way at all, but like, how can a resource be useful for us professionally and personally at the same time? So some of the times we've really benefited from kind of this book study, but it's hyper focused on Christian formation. Love that.
Thank you, Mark. Something that Mark and Natasha both have referred to is we asked our Sabbath grant recipients to be a part of a cohort experience where they also named a mentor that they were brought alongside of them. So that was a unique piece of that cohort, where we had someone walk along. They each had someone specific that walked alongside them. So it's great to continue to hear those stories. I think I have Catherine Campbell that would like to round out our sharing.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see so many familiar faces and to be with you this afternoon. I echo some of what Mark said in some part. I was a part of a cohort when they were first launched a few years ago officially, that Vaughn was leading. And we still get together every 4 to 6 weeks to check in with each other and bounce ideas off of one another, almost in a, we call it a hot seat. Who has that burning question that is going on in your ministry? I have this problem going on. I have this, has anybody done this vacation Bible school idea? And so the ways that, similar to what Mark said, got together and pooled our resources to send a baby gift for one of our cohort members who's, soon expecting, and just been with each other through some things. And so the connection is strong and deep, and it's spectacular. And unfortunately, that's not going to happen in every cohort, but that doesn't mean that it isn't important to learn the topic at hand. And you're still going to be able to engage in some way. So I just, I think many of us have already done cohorts in some way, shape, or form, but to just echo that the ways that we get to grow individually as well as collectively, I think can be a real gift. So I'm just appreciative of the ways that the collective and the office is supporting those. So thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. So I think we've heard from a pretty large variety, from youth ministry to educators to our Sabbath. Wondering if anyone from our older adult ministries network would like to share about their cohort. Otherwise, we can move on. But if you want to wave your hand or just unmute and speak, you're welcome to do so. All right. Well, thank you all for this time of sharing. As I mentioned, when we do cohorts and when we do ministry, we do so in partnership. And it has been a strong partnership with our associations to reach out and learn about what different leaders need and are looking for. So now we're going to come to the time of moving forward. What do we all want to see happen with our cohorts? So here are a few things that we're thinking about to kind of get you started. We have trained, and I think they're here today, we've trained 2 Spanish-speaking coaches, Madeline Alvarez and Stephanie Vasquez, I think are here. So we are absolutely wanting to add some Spanish language cohorts. We have had some requests for commissioned ruling elder CREs. Do you have any CREs in the house? Like, just wave your hands if you're a CRE, because you guys are amazing. Y'all are amazing. We've had some requests for some CRE type cohorts. We have had some requests, and we are thinking about longer term cohorts. I mentioned that we tend to have a 6-week or an every other week for 6 sessions. But what does it look like for longer term? Appreciative to hear that many cohorts can continue to meet on their own. Do you want resources or support for that? Or are you like, we're good, we got it? So thinking about those, can we be of help, resource, assistance to folks going forward?